The man on the bench day began like any other. Soft golden sunlight filtered through the tall glass windows of the Google headquarters in Mountain View. The lobby buzzed with a quiet rhythm, footsteps echoing, coffee brewing, badges beeping. Sundar Pichai walked in calmly, dressed in his usual modest-style plain shirt, slacks and glasses perched gently on his nose. He greeted the receptionist with a warm smile and nodded at a young intern walking past. But there was something different in the air that morning. A subtle restlessness. He couldn't place it, but it tugged at him. He had just returned from an overseas trip, meeting engineers in Berlin and developers in Bangalore. His schedule was packed as usual meetings, strategy reviews, a keynote preparation. Yet as he passed the massive digital board near the cafeteria displaying analytics and updates, his eyes drifted to something else, the city beyond the glass. Just outside the campus, near the sidewalk by the entrance gate, a man sat slouched on a bench. The man's clothes were worn and faded, his shoes barely holding together. A tangled beard covered most of his face, and a weather jacket clung to his thin frame. Sundar paused. He'd passed this spot hundreds of times over the years. People came and went. Tech lovers took selfies near the colorful Google sign, and tour groups marveled at the company's innovative campus. But this man, he looked different. Not just because of his condition, but something deeper. His posture, the way he sat, head bowed, hands clasped tightly together. As if he had once held something important and lost it all. A strange sensation stirred inside Sundar. He couldn't explain it. But something about that man felt familiar. He took a few steps closer toward the glass wall, pretending to check his phone. From that angle, he got a better look at the man's face, though it was half hidden beneath the curls of his overgrown hair. A flicker, a memory. He blinked and tilted his head. No, it couldn't be. His heart skipped was at No, impossible. But the more he stared, the more a name floated to the surface of his mind. Arjun. It hit him like a wave. Arjun Mehta. The very first engineer he had personally hired when he joined Google years ago. A genius in artificial intelligence. Self-taught, humble, full of strange jokes and kindness. He had once built a prototype that could translate sarcasm in real time, something they all laughed about for months. He was brilliant, reliable, and warm. And then gone. Sundar remembered how Arjun had suddenly quit during a restructuring phase. The official reason was personal matters, and nobody asked more. The tech world moved quickly. New projects came, new faces replaced the old, and over time, Arjun's name faded into the past. But now, Sundar stood frozen. Was this broken man the same Arjun who once led brainstorms in packed conference rooms? Who used to stay late perfecting lines of code with childlike excitement? His mind raced. He turned abruptly and walked out through the front doors, ignoring his assistant calling after him. As Sundar crossed the campus toward the outer bench, every step felt heavy. He kept rehearsing what he would say. Excuse me, Are you Arjun Mehta? Too direct? Do you remember me? I'm Sundar. No, that sounded self-important. He took a breath. As he approached. The man on the bench stirred, sensing someone nearby. He didn't look up. He simply shifted, pulling his jacket tighter, as if shrinking into himself. Sundar stood a few feet away, heart thudding. Hi, he said gently, voice low. Can I sit? The man didn't respond for a moment, then gave a slow nod. Sundar sat down beside him, leaving a respectful distance. They sat in silence. The traffic rolled past behind them. Birds chirped above. The breeze carried the faint scent of coffee and morning dew. After a few moments, Sundar spoke again. You used to work at Google, didn't you? The man's hands stiffened. He slowly turned his head. His eyes, though tired and surrounded by dark circles, still held that same intensity. A spark of recognition. Double quotes. I. I don't remember, the man whispered, voice raspy. Sometimes. I dream I did, but dreams lie. Sundar felt a lump in his throat. Your name is Arjun Mehta, he said softly. You joined the team in 2005. You built the sarcasm detector. The man gave a quiet, broken laugh. Sarcasm detector, ... Yeah, that sounds like me. His voice trembled. You really remember? Sundar nodded. How could I forget? Arjun blinked fast, tears forming in his eyes. Nobody said my name in years, he murmured. Not like that. Not like it mattered. Sundar wanted to say something comforting, but the words caught in his throat. Instead, he reached into his pocket and offered a bottle of water he always carried. Arjun hesitated, then accepted it with shaky hands. He drank slowly, as if savoring each drop. What happened? Sundar finally asked. Why did you leave? Where have you been all this time? Arjun wiped his mouth and stared at the ground. My wife got sick, he began, voice barely above a whisper. Cancer, stage 4. We didn't have good insurance. I tried everything, sold our house, drained savings, but the treatments, they were endless. He paused. She died. The word hung in the air, sharp and unforgiving. I broke, he continued. I didn't want to code, didn't want to eat. I disappeared. Couldn't face anyone, not even myself. Tears slipped down Sundar's face before he realized it. Arjun looked at him, surprised. You're crying? He asked, genuinely confused. Of course I am, Sundar said, his voice cracking. You weren't just an employee, Arjun. You were part of this? He gestured toward the towering buildings behind them. You helped build what this place is. Arjun looked down again. Unable to speak, the silence between them was heavy, but not uncomfortable. It was full of things unsaid, full of shared sorrow. And human connection. Finally, Sundar stood. Come with me, he said. Arjun looked up, wary. Where? Inside, Sundar said. Back where you belong. Arjun gave a small, sad smile. I don't belong there anymore. I don't even have an address. Sundar looked at him firmly. Then let's change that. Just then, a security guard approached, clearly concerned about Sundar's presence so close to the gate. Mr. Pichai, is everything okay? Sundar turned to the guard. Yes, he said calmly, but I need a guest pass for my friend here. And make sure someone brings him a hot meal. The guard hesitated, glancing at Arjun's tattered clothes. Sir, we usually have procedures for make an exception, Sundar said. His voice steady but gentle. The guard nodded slowly, pulling out his phone. Sundar turned back to Arjun. Just come in for a coffee, he said. We'll talk more. No pressure. Arjun looked conflicted. His fingers tightened around the bottle. Okay, he whispered as they walked toward the entrance together. Staff turned their heads. Some recognized Sundar. None recognized the man beside him, and that's when the whispers started. People noticed the way Sundar walked beside the ragged man, not ahead, not behind, but beside. And just before they stepped inside, Arjun froze at the door. His eyes scanned the bright lobby, the clean floors, the young engineers hustling past. He looked at Sundar. Are you sure? He asked. Sundar smiled. I've never been more sure. And as they stepped inside, the doors closed behind them, but not before someone nearby snapped a photo on their phone. That photo would go viral by nightfall. But what happened inside the building would shake the entire company to its core. Asterisk whispers. Through the glass walls, Sundar and Arjun stepped through the tall sliding glass doors into the Google campus lobby. A strange hush seemed to fall over the space. The usual murmur of conversation, the polite exchanges between reception and staff, the echo of footsteps along the polished floors, all of it felt distant, muted. As if the building itself was holding its breath, Sundar glanced to his side, subtly watching Arjun. The man's eyes were wide, flicking from screen to screen, wall to wall, face to face, like someone emerging from a long, dark tunnel into sudden light. His fingers trembled slightly as he clutched the bottle of water Sundar had given him. Everything about his body language spoke of hesitation, of vulnerability, of someone painfully aware of how far they had fallen. Yet there was also something else, something quiet but resilient in the way Arjun walked beside him. His gait was uneven, but his back had straightened just a little. His eyes, though tired, sparked with fragments of recognition, like ghosts of a past life stirring within. The receptionist at the front desk stood abruptly when she saw Sundar approaching, brushing down her blazer nervously. "Good morning, Mr. Pichai. I need a visitor badge for my guest?" Sundar said, his tone calm but unyielding. "Please make sure he's welcomed properly." The woman hesitated for a beat, her eyes darting to Arjun and quickly back, but she nodded. "Of course. Right away." A few feet away, two interns passing by paused mid-conversation, glancing curiously at the unlikely pair. One leaned in and whispered, "Who is that guy with Sundar?" The other shrugged, pulling out a phone suddenly. Sundar turned toward Arjun. "Let's go to the cafe. I think you'll recognize it." Arjun gave a hesitant smile. "If it's still where it used to be, I probably helped debug the order screen." They walked down a hallway lined with displays showcasing Google's most recent innovations, machine learning, sustainability projects, quantum computing. Arjun looked at each with wide eyes, not in awe of the technology, but in mourning, like someone walking through an alternate version of the life he might have lived. The cafe was moderately busy. Engineers in hoodies typed furiously on laptops while sipping flat whites. Small groups huddled around the whiteboards with colorful markers, ideas flowing like rivers. The air smelled of roasted coffee beans and warm pastries. When Sundar and Arjun walked in, conversations dipped noticeably. A few people suddenly stood taller. Someone quickly nudged a colleague, pointing with their eyes. Arjun didn't seem to notice, or perhaps he pretended not to. His focus was on the counter. Sundar ordered 2 coffees and a warm breakfast sandwich for Arjun. The barista, a young woman with bright eyes, hesitated when she saw the man beside Sundar. But Sundar smiled and added, "And please add a blueberry muffin. He used to love those." Arjun's eyes welled with sudden emotion. He whispered, "You remembered." They sat in a quiet corner by the window. Arjun held the cup carefully, as if it might break from the slightest pressure. He took a sip and let the warmth linger on his tongue, then sighed. "I didn't think I'd ever taste this again," he said. "I used to joke that the coffee here was better than my marriage." "She didn't like that." Sundar smiled gently. "You were always saying something outrageous." "Yeah," Arjun said, "sometimes to hide how scared I was of being found out." "Found out that I didn't belong?" "That I wasn't as smart as the rest. Imposter syndrome. It haunted me every day." "But you were brilliant," Sundar said, leaning forward. "You were the kind of thinker that pushed the boundaries. People loved working with you." Arjun gave a sad chuckle. "Then why didn't anyone come looking for me?" Sundar fell silent. It was a fair question, a painful one. After a long pause, Sundar said softly, "The truth is, this place moves fast. Too fast sometimes. It rewards visibility. When someone disappears, everyone assumes they moved on to something better. Or worse, they stop noticing." Arjun looked out the window. "I didn't even get a goodbye cake," he said with a crooked smile. "You remember the cakes? They used to write code on them in frosting." "I remember," Sundar said. "And I'm sorry. You deserved more." Arjun looked down at his hands. The tremble had returned. "I had nothing left after she died," he said. "I thought I'd start fresh in a new city. But grief followed me. I couldn't get a job. My resume was outdated. I didn't know how to explain the gaps. Eventually, the money ran out. Then the couch surfing turned into shelters, and the shelters turned into sidewalks." Sundar's chest tightened. "How long?" he asked. 3 years, Arjun said. 3 years of disappearing." They sat in silence again, the sound of keyboards clicking and coffee machines steaming around them. Sundar finally said, "You don't have to disappear anymore." Arjun gave a weak laugh. "What do you mean? You're not just going to bring me back into Google, are you?" "Why not?" Sundar asked. Arjun shook his head. "Because the world doesn't work like that. There are protocols, background checks, a system." Sundar leaned in, his voice firm. "And sometimes systems need to be reminded what they were made for people. Even broken people, especially broken people." Just then, a voice interrupted. Pichai. They both turned out it was Mia, a senior VP and longtime colleague of Sundar. She looked confused, her eyes bouncing between the two men. Sorry to interrupt, she said carefully. But, everything okay? Sundar nodded. Maya, meet Arjun Mehta, one of the smartest engineers I've ever worked with. Yes. Brows furrowed, and then suddenly her expression changed. Recognition dawned slowly. Wait, Arjun, the sarcasm guy? That's me, Arjun said with a small grin. Maya's eyes widened. Oh my God. I thought you'd moved to Europe or something. I hadn't heard your name in forever. I moved somewhere all right, Arjun said, trying to keep it light, just not where people send postcards. Maya looked puzzled. Sundar interjected. Maya, I want to explore something. I want to see if we can create a re-entry fellowship for past employees who left under difficult circumstances. People like Arjun. Mia blinked. You're serious? Dead serious, Sundar said. Arjun looked stunned. Sundar, I didn't come here looking for charity. This isn't charity, Sundar said. It's justice. Maya slowly nodded. I mean, it's unconventional, but maybe that's what we need. She looked at Arjun again, her expression softening. You were brilliant, she said. You still are. We lost something when we lost you. Arjun looked down, overcome. I don't know if I'm ready, he whispered. I don't know if I even remember how to code. Then we'll start with a keyboard and a quiet room, Sundar said. And maybe a haircut, Maya added with a kind smile. They all laughed, and for a moment, the heaviness in the room lifted. Arjun's single quotes hands gripped the coffee cup tighter, as if anchoring himself to this surreal moment. I still sleep with one eye open, he admitted. In case someone tries to steal my shoes. Sundar nodded solemnly. Then the first thing we'll do is find you a safe place to stay. Just as they were wrapping up, a junior engineer from across the cafe walked over. He looked nervous, holding out his phone. I'm sorry, but ... is this true? He showed them a post that was rapidly spreading online. Photo of Sundar sitting on the bench with a homeless man. The caption read, Google CEO spotted comforting a stranger. The internet wants to know who he is. Arjun stared at the screen, his own face frozen in time. Well, he said, I guess disappearing won't be so easy anymore. Sundar smiled. Good. It's time you were seen again. But outside that building, across town, someone else had seen that photo too. Someone Arjun never thought he'd hear from again. Someone who changed everything. Asterisk shadows from the past sun was beginning its slow descent over Mountain View, painting long golden rays across the sleek glass walls of the Google headquarters. Inside the building, Arjun sat alone in a quiet conference room overlooking the courtyard. The room smelled faintly of whiteboard markers and new carpet. A scent that once felt like home but now pressed memories against his chest like a weight. He stared at the keyboard in front of him. His fingers hovered over the keys, trembling slightly. He hadn't touched a computer in nearly 3 years, not since the night he sold his last laptop to pay for medicine. That evening had felt like a final betrayal, as if he was giving up the last piece of his identity. And now, here he was again, staring down a familiar interface that suddenly felt like a stranger. The cursor blinked. So did he. He placed his hands gently on the keys. Nothing. His mind felt foggy, unsure. The logic, the rhythm, the thrill of creating from nothing, all of it felt buried under years of exhaustion and survival. But just as he was about to pull his hands away, the door creaked open. Sundar stepped in, holding 2 steaming mugs of chai. I figured you might want something warmer than coffee, he said, setting a cup down beside Arjun. Arjun gave a grateful nod. You remembered again. Sundar smiled, sitting across from him. Of course, I remember everything that matters. They sat quietly for a moment. The sounds of distant footsteps and soft murmurs from other rooms created a gentle background hum. It's strange, Arjun finally said. My hands remember the shape of the keyboard, the texture. But the code ... it's like trying to remember a dream. Dreams can return, Sundar replied softly. Especially if you walk back into them with patience. Arjun took a sip of the chai. The warmth seeped into him slowly, melting a bit of the tension. He glanced out the window, watching as a group of interns laughed near the bike racks. He smiled faintly. Do they know? He asked. Do they know who I was? Sundar shook his head. Not yet. But soon, they'll know who you are. Just then, Sundar's assistant knocked gently and entered with a folder in her hand. Sir, we've had a development. Sundar looked up. What kind? It's about the photo that went viral this morning. Someone came forward. Says they know Arjun. Arjun's brow furrowed. The assistant continued. A woman. Her name is Mehta. She claims to be a sister. The cup slipped slightly in Arjun's hands. Tara? He whispered. She ... She saw the photo? Sundar sat forward. Do you want to see her? Arjun hesitated. Memories came rushing in like waves of a younger Tara with braids and big eyes, playing old Hindi songs on a broken cassette player, arguing with him about who ate the last piece of cake, crying quietly. When their parents passed away, they hadn't spoken in years. The last time he saw her was at his wife's funeral. He had pushed everyone away, including her. She's here? He asked. The assistant nodded, waiting downstairs. Arjun looked down at his hands. He was ashamed not just of how he looked, but of how far he had fallen in her absence. Does she know what happened to me? He asked softly. Sundar met his eyes. She's not here to judge you. She's here because she never stopped looking. Tears blurred Arjun's vision. He wiped his face quickly. Bring her in. The assistant disappeared. A few minutes later, the door opened slowly again. Tara walked in, her steps careful. Unsure, she was older, now her face lined with worry, her clothes simple. But her eyes were the same. When she saw Arjun, she froze. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then her face crumpled, and she rushed forward, throwing her arms around him. Baya, she cried. Where were you? Arjun held her, his body shaking. I was lost, Tara. I didn't know how to come back. She pulled away just enough to look at him. I looked everywhere. Shelters, hospitals. I filed reports, but no one knew. I didn't want to be found, he said, ashamed. I thought I was protecting you. I didn't want you to see me like this. Tara placed a hand on his cheek. I would rather see you broken than buried. Sundar watched quietly, his chest heavy. Tara turned to him. Thank you. I don't know how to repay you. You don't have to, Sundar said. We take care of our people. And Arjun was always one of the best. She sat beside Arjun and took his hand. Come home, she whispered. We'll figure everything out. You don't have to sleep outside anymore. Arjun looked torn. I don't even know how to be normal again, he admitted. I flinch when someone offers me a blanket. I still eat food like it might disappear. That's okay, Tara said. We'll heal one day at a time. A knock interrupted them again. It was Maya, peeking in nervously. Sorry, she sighed. But Arjun, there's someone else here who wants to speak with you. Another ghost from my past? Arjun asked, trying to joke. Maya, single quotes, was unreadable. You could say that. She stepped aside, and a man walked in. Tall, neatly dressed, carrying a folder, clean-shaven, serious eyes. When Arjun saw him, the blood drained from his face. You? He said, voice barely above a whisper. Hello, Arjun? The man replied. Tara looked between them, confused. Who is he? She asked. This, Arjun said slowly, is Vinay Sharma. He used to work at the insurance company that denied my wife's final treatments. Vinay looked uncomfortable. I came because of the photo. I recognized you. And there's something I've carried for years. Something you need to know. Arjun stood shakily. You denied her coverage. You told me we'd missed a form, that she wasn't eligible. You let her die. Vinay nodded slowly. I did. And it's haunted me ever since. Haunted you? Arjun said, anger rising in his chest. You went home every night. You had a bed, a family. I slept on benches. I watched her wither away. Don't talk to me about ghosts. Arjun. Sundar started. No. Arjun snapped. He doesn't get to come in here and pretend he's sorry. Vinay stepped closer. I'm not asking forgiveness. But I brought something with me. He opened the folder and pulled out a stack of documents. A week before her case was denied. He said your wife's name was flagged, not for medical reasons, but because someone at the hospital suspected billing fraud. It wasn't true. I know that now, but I didn't fight the system. I followed the process. I watched the machine eat her alive. He handed the papers to Arjun. These are internal emails, proof of what really happened. I kept them hidden all these years, but when I saw your face, I couldn't carry the lie anymore. Arjun looked at the pages, his hands trembling. Names, dates, decisions made in quiet boardrooms. People playing God with lives they didn't know. I lost everything, he said. Because someone thought we were lying. Vinay nodded. And I want to help you fight back. If you'll let me. Tara stepped forward, her voice low. How can we trust you? Vinay looked her in the eye. Because I lost my job when I tried to expose this 5 years ago. And because watching a man like Arjun disappear while I stayed. Silent was the worst mistake of my life. The room fell into silence again. Arjun looked at Sundar, his voice shaking. What do I do now? Sundar stood beside him. You rebuild, he said. But this time you don't do it alone. Arjun looked down at the documents again, and a new fire sparked in his eyes. Not anger, not despair, but something stronger. Resolve. Outside the window. The sky turned orange and pink. But inside that room, something was just beginning. And a nearby office, someone else was watching the same photo of Arjun and Sundar, their face unreadable. Their hands clenched. They had secrets too, and they were about to be exposed. Asterisk the broken system. Morning after the confrontation with Vinay brought a strange stillness over the Google campus. Outside, the trees swayed gently in the wind, as if nature itself were trying to whisper something through the glass walls. The air was crisp, the sun hung low, and everything looked the same, but nothing felt the same. Arjun sat quietly in the same corner conference room. A thick folder of documents now spread before him. Some pages were dog-eared and stained with old fingerprints. Others were crisp and fresh, printed just the night before. They weren't just papers. They were proof. Proof that his wife's suffering and his downfall had not been due to bad luck or poor planning, but because of calculated negligence, faceless policies, and an indifferent machine that valued risk reports over human lives. He stared at the top page, an email from a mid-level insurance executive flagging his wife's file as potentially problematic. The note said, no need to escalate, deny to avoid liability risk. He remembered the day she cried after the final rejection letter arrived. She told him, maybe I'm not worth saving. And he had held her tightly, promising her. They would find a way. They never did. Now. Years later, the system was still intact. But Arjun wasn't the same man. He had walked through fire, through rain, through loneliness, so deep it swallowed whole months of his life. And somehow, after all that, here he was again, staring down the beast. He heard a knock. The door opened, and Sundar walked in, holding 2 brown paper bags. Breakfast, he said, offering one to Arjun. There's a cafe down the street. That still makes the samosas you used to rave about. Arjun smiled faintly. I didn't think you'd remember. I remember everything that has meaning, Sundar said, as he sat beside him. How are you feeling? Arjun didn't answer. Right away. Instead, he picked up the email and passed it to Sundar. They knew, he said quietly. They knew she was dying. And they let her. Sundar read the email carefully. His face didn't change much, but his eyes darkened. He closed the folder slowly. What do you want to do, Arjun? I want the world to see this, Arjun said. I want them to understand that people like my wife aren't just numbers in a system. Then let's make that happen. Arjun looked at him, surprised. You really mean that? We have a platform most people only dream of, Sundar. Sad, I've seen stories go viral overnight that change legislation. We can make this bigger than just a tragedy. We can make it a movement, but won't that be risky? Arjun asked. For the company? For you? Sundar nodded. Probably. But sometimes doing the right thing means stepping into discomfort. And this story, it's too important to ignore. They were interrupted by a soft knock. Maya entered, her arms crossed, expression unreadable. I just got off a call, she said. Legal is already aware of the insurance angle. They're advising caution. Of course they are, Sundar said. They always do. Maya sat down across from Arjun and studied him for a moment. I've also heard whispers, she said. Internal messages between executives. People are nervous about you being here. Arjun frowned. Why? Because you're a reminder, she said. A reminder of what happens when the system forgets the people it was built to serve. And they're afraid you'll make too much noise. Arjun looked down, fingers tightening around the edge of the folder. Let them be afraid. He said quietly. Maya gave a nod of approval. That's what I wanted to hear. She turned to Sundar. But there's more. Someone leaked Arjun's. Return to the press. Sundar blinked. What do you mean? An anonymous source emailed several Keck journalists, she said. They're saying you're trying to rehire a homeless man for sympathy. That it's a publicity stunt. Arjun's stomach dropped. Are you serious? Maya slid a printed copy of the message across the table. The email read, CEO Sundar Pichai is bringing a mentally unstable vagrant into the company. Is this what leadership looks like? Or is it just a staged performance to boost PR? Arjun's throat tightened. They called me unstable, he whispered. They don't even know me. That's how these things work, Maya said. They strike before you can speak. Sundar was quiet, his fingers steepled, thinking. We respond, he said finally. But not with a press statement. With something real. He looked at Arjun. We tell your story. Not through someone else's lens, but through your own. What are you suggesting? Arjun asked. A talk, Sundar said. An open conversation. You, me, and the campus. We live stream it, unedited. Raw. You share what happened. Not just to your wife, but to you. Arjun hesitated. What if I mess it up? Then we'll mess it up together, Sundar said. But you won't? Because your story isn't just yours, it belongs to every person who's ever been silenced. Arjun closed his eyes for a moment. He could see her again, his wife, lying in the hospital bed, smiling through the pain. He remembered promising her he'd find peace someday. That peace didn't come quietly. Maybe it came through truth. He opened his eyes. Okay, he said. Let's do it. Maya nodded. I'll arrange the space. Later that evening, a large crowd gathered in the auditorium. Employees filled the seats. The air buzzed with curiosity and whispers. Cameras were set up. Screens glowed with live stream connections. Across the internet, thousands were already watching. On stage, Sundar stood beside Arjun. The contrast was stark, one in a tailored blazer, polished and composed. The other in borrowed clothes and scuffed shoes, visibly nervous. But when Arjun stepped to the microphone, the room quieted. My name is Arjun Mehta, he began. Some of you may not remember me. Some of you weren't even here when I was one of the first engineers hired when this company started growing fast. He paused. I used to write code with joy. I used to believe we were building a better world. The audience listened, leaning forward. But then my wife got sick, he continued. And I discovered that the world I believed in the world, full of innovation and compassion, didn't have room for people like us when we became inconvenient. He opened the folder, holding up one of the documents. Asterisk. This is the email that sealed my wife's fate. Not a doctor's note, not a lab result. Just a decision from someone who never met her. The room was silent. Arjun's voice shook but held strong. After she died, I disappeared. Not because I was weak, but because I had no one. The system that lifted me up also crushed me. He looked around. But today, I am standing here because someone remembered me. Because someone refused to let me disappear completely. And because maybe, just maybe, it's time we stop pretending broken people don't matter. There was a pause, then someone stood and clapped dot, then another dot, and another, until the whole room rose to their feet. Arjun stood motionless, stunned. Tears filled his eyes. And in that moment, he realized something powerful. He wasn't invisible anymore, but backstage. A figure stood watching the live stream on a phone. Her name was Riya Patel, head of strategic communications. She scrolled down a different thread, one full of screenshots and flagged messages, and at the bottom of the page, buried under security, clearance notes, was a line of text. Employee termination file. Arjun. Mehta archived under internal risk, flagged by executive directive. Do not reinstate. Ria's eyes narrowed. Someone had tried to erase him from within and now that secret was about to come out. Asterisk, the file that should not exist. Applause still echoed in Arjun's ears long after he left the stage. His hands shook slightly as he stepped off the platform, back into the narrow hallway behind the auditorium. The roar of standing ovation, the lights, the overwhelming eyes watching it, was all still swirling in his mind like a dream. For a man who once spent nights curled up under overpasses, who'd eaten from half-empty bins, the sound of validation was surreal. Healing, yes. But surreal. Sundar placed a steady hand on Arjun's shoulder. You were incredible, he said quietly. Arjun turned to face him, his eyes moist but focused. I thought my voice would crack. I thought I'd fall apart in front of everyone. You didn't, Sundar said. You stood taller than all of us today. Behind them, Maya appeared with her tablet in hand and a strange expression tightening. Her face. We have a problem, she said, not bothering to ease into the conversation. Sundar raised an eyebrow. What now? Maya looked directly at Arjun. I think someone inside the company tried to erase you. Arjun blinked. What? She handed the tablet to Sundar. Displayed on the screen was a digital archive, time-stamped and heavily redacted. But one section stood out, highlighted in yellow and marked with a bright red tag. Employee termination file. Arjun Mehta. Do not reinstate. Classified as internal risk. Initiated by executive directive. Confidential. Arjun's heart dropped. What ... What does that mean? Maya took a breath. It means someone in a high-ranking position not only let you fall through the cracks, but made sure no one could catch you. Sundar's jaw clenched. Do we know who signed this? Not yet, Maya said. The directive came from a proxy account anonymous approval tied to an older executive ID. But someone's been hiding this. And recently, someone's been trying to make sure Arjun's story never reaches the public. Arjun stepped back, as if the screen itself had struck him. Why would anyone do that? He asked, voice trembling. I wasn't a threat. I just ... disappeared. Maya looked toward Sundar. We need help. Sundar nodded. Bring in Riya. An hour later, in a glass-walled meeting room overlooking the courtyard, Riya Patel laid out a trail of digital footprints, emails, login logs, server accesses, and anonymous reports. Her eyes flickered with intensity as she tapped on her laptop, opening windows filled with code and metadata. Whoever did this, she said, was careful, but not careful enough. Arjun sat at the end of the table, silent. Tara was beside him, holding his hand tightly. What do you mean? Sundar asked. Look here, Riya pointed. This proxy account used a masked IP, routed through a private server. But they made one mistake. They accessed it using a device on our secure internal network. Only one device had that access on that day. And it belonged to... She paused, eyes narrowing. Roger Dalton. The room went completely still. Maya's face hardened. Roger? The former CFO? Yes, Riya confirmed. He was the one overseeing operations and budgets during the years Arjun was here. And according to this file, he marked Arjun as a financial liability. Arjun's breath hitched. A liability? Riya pulled up another document. He thought you were too empathetic, that your insistence on pushing for employee mental health programs and expense transparency was costly and idealistic. When your wife got sick and your output slowed, he labeled your project as non-performing and flagged you for quiet offboarding. Tara gasped. So they didn't just let him leave, she said. They made sure he was pushed out? Ria nodded slowly. And when you left Arjun, they added you to a watch list. No one was to rehire you. No inquiries allowed. All your internal records were moved to a restricted folder. Only a few people even had access. Arjun sat back, stunned at his wife's death. His fall into homelessness. All of it. Not just tragedy. But sabotage. How could someone do this? He asked, voice hollow. How could anyone sleep at night knowing what they'd caused? Ria's expression softened. Because people like Roger Dalton think in spreadsheets, not souls. Sundar stood up, his voice calm but razor sharp. Where is he now? He's retired, Ria said, living in Carmel. Sits on the board of several tech foundations. And he still speaks at leadership summits. Then it's time the world hears what kind of leader he really is, Sundar said. Arjun's eyes slowly lifted. There was no anger on his face, now just quiet resolve. I want to face him, he said. Tara turned to him, alarmed. Are you sure? Yes, Arjun said. I don't want revenge. I want accountability, not just for me, but for every person who got lost in this system. Ria hesitated. Then there's one more thing. She pulled out a small flash drive and slid it across the table toward Arjun. What's this? He asked. It's a full internal report. Every red flag ever raised about Roger Dalton's conduct. Things we didn't act on because no one looked. Deep enough. It's your story, but it's also theirs. Arjun looked down at the tiny drive. It seemed so small yet so powerful, like a key to a locked door he had long forgotten even existed. Then let's open it, he said. 2 days later, Arjun stood in front of a crowded press hall. The room was filled with journalists, cameras, and onlookers. Google's official statement had been released earlier that morning, revealing the truth about the internal flagging of Arjun's name and the executive directives that contributed to his erasure. It had sent shockwaves through the tech industry, but the real moment hadn't happened yet, because now Arjun stood not just as a man who had suffered, but as a man who had survived. He stepped to the podium. My name is Arjun Mehta, he said again, voice steady, stronger this time. And I was never a threat. I was never unstable. I was never disposable. He reached into his pocket and held up the flash drive. This contains evidence of the decisions that erased me. But it also contains something more. It contains the truth of how easily one human can be turned into a no one is watching. He paused, letting the silence stretch. Double quotes today. We make sure everyone is watching. He clicked a remote, and behind him, a giant screen lit up with images, emails, and timelines, visual proof of the quiet sabotage that nearly ended the life. And then he said the name, Roger Dalton. The cameras clicked rapidly. Reporters gasped. This man did not kill my wife, Arjun said. But he helped make sure she wasn't saved. And then he made sure my voice was buried with her. He looked into the camera, into the eyes of the world. Not anymore. Outside the building, miles away in a coastal home overlooking the ocean, Roger Dalton stared at his television, frozen. The remote slipped from his hand. Beside him, his phone buzzed nonstop with messages, calls, and news alerts. His world calculated. Controlled, untouchable, was beginning to crumble. But back at Google, something else was happening. As Arjun left the stage, a young engineer approached him, no older than 22, holding a laptop. Sir, she said nervously, I watched your talk, and I want to build something with you. A platform where stories like yours can be shared, where whistleblowers don't vanish, where people who fall through the cracks have somewhere to land. Arjun stared at her, stunned. You want to build it? With me? Yes, she said. You don't just deserve a second chance, you deserve a legacy. Arjun looked at Sundar, who nodded with quiet pride. Then he looked at Tara, who smiled, tears shining in her eyes. He turned back to the young engineer and reached out his hand. Then, let's build it together. But just before they could shake hands, Ria came running down the hallway, her face pale. There's something you need to see, she said breathlessly. Holding up her phone. On the screen was a message. Anonymous. Freshly posted. You've only scratched the surface. If you think Roger Dalton was the only one, you're wrong. Meet me tomorrow. 9 a.m. Cafe Aurora. Come alone. Arjun's eyes narrowed. The deeper truth was still buried. And now someone wanted to help him dig it out. Asterisk, the legacy of the unseen. Next morning was overcast. The sky painted in cold gray streaks, as if the world itself was holding its breath. Arjun sat quietly in the back of a rideshare car, his reflection barely visible in the window beside him. The car weaved through the sleepy early streets of Mountain View, and as they approached Cafe Aurora, a small, artsy place tucked between bookstores and bike shops, he felt his stomach tighten. Asterisk. He didn't know what to expect. The message had been clear. Anonymous. Mysterious. Someone had seen the talk, had read the files, and still believed there was more than Roger Dalton, more than a system failing one man. A thread, perhaps, that wove deeper through the very fabric of decisions that shaped countless lives from behind closed doors. When the car stopped, Arjun stepped out slowly. He wore a simple gray sweater and jeans borrowed from Sundar's personal wardrobe. His hair had been trimmed the day before, his face freshly shaved. The man who once sat silent on a bench now moved with the slow dignity of someone who knew he had found his voice again. Even if the weight of it still felt new, the cafe was mostly empty, save for a few early risers. He stepped inside, the chime of the door breaking the stillness. A barista offered a polite smile. Arjun scanned the room, and then he saw her. A woman sat in the farthest corner. A scarf wrapped around her neck, sunglasses perched on her head despite the lack of sun. She looked up as he approached and gave a small nod. He walked over. Are you the one who sent the message? He asked quietly. She motioned for him to sit. My name's Elena, she said. I used to work in operations. A long time ago. Back when you were still here. Arjun's heart quickened. I remember you. You weren't supposed to, she said. That was the whole point. She pulled a small notebook from her bag and placed it on the table. I watched your speech, she said. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel crazy. Because I saw what they did to you. And I know because I watched it happen to others too. Arjun's eyes flicked down to the notebook. Others? Dozens, Elena said. Some from inside Google. Some from other companies, quietly buried, pushed out, red flagged for speaking up, blacklisted because they asked the wrong questions, raised the wrong concerns. Why didn't you say anything? Arjun asked gently. Because I was scared, she said. Because I was young. And because I didn't think anyone would believe. Me. She opened the notebook. Inside were names, case numbers, internal memos. People with stories like his. People who were forgotten. Roger Dalton, she said, wasn't the architect. He was just one part of a bigger engine. Arjun leaned in. How big? Elena looked at him, her eyes heavy. Big enough to make your case look like a ripple. They sat for over an hour. She showed him more than files. She showed him patterns. Executive meetings where names were removed from promotion lists without cause. Projects canceled when whistleblowers stepped forward. Performance reviews doctored. Warning flags ignored. They called it strategic trimming, she said. A way to maintain efficiency. But it was really about control. Arjun felt. Anger rise in his chest again, but it was sharper now, more focused. This wasn't about vengeance. This was about exposure. About shining light into corners no one wanted to admit existed. We can't let this stay hidden, he said. Don't have to, Elena replied. But we'll need more than documents. We need stories, faces, real people willing to come forward. And if they're scared, then we protect them. When Arjun left the cafe that morning, his heart was pounding. Not with fear, but With purpose. Over the next 3 weeks, Arjun, Tara, Sundar, Ria, Maya, and Elena worked tirelessly. They built a secure digital platform called Voice Code, a place for tech workers to share their experiences anonymously or openly, without fear of retribution. The platform was encrypted end-to-end, designed by a small, trusted group of engineers who volunteered once they heard Arjun's story. Voice Code wasn't just a website. It was a movement. It launched quietly on a Monday morning. By noon, over 600 people had posted stories of wrongful terminations, ignored harassment, mental health struggles met with silence, careers cut short because someone in a corner office decided they were inconvenient. Arjun spent hours reading through the submissions. One stood out. I used to think I was alone. Then I heard Arjun speak. I cried that night, because for the first time I knew I wasn't invisible. By Friday, Voice Code was on the front page of every major news outlet. Tech giants issued statements. Former executives backpedaled. Scrambled. And then the calls started. Government inquiries, human rights advocates, investors demanding reform. Arjun was no longer just a survivor. He had become a voice for the voiceless. 1 month later, a public hearing was held in Washington. Sundar was invited to speak. So was Arjun. They sat beside each other before a panel of senators, both calm, both unwavering. Mr. Mehta, one senator asked, "What do you hope comes from this?" Arjun paused, looking across the room filled with press and officials. "I don't want punishment," he said. "I want prevention. I want companies to understand that innovation without humanity is dangerous. That progress should not leave people behind. I want a world where speaking the truth doesn't mean losing everything." The room was silent for a long moment. Then the senator nodded. "Thank you for your courage." After the hearing, Sundar placed an arm around Arjun's shoulder as they walked into the hallway. "Do you know what today is?" Sundar asked. "What? Your wife's birthday?" Arjun stopped walking. His breath caught in his throat. "How do you—" "I found the note you left on her memorial site," Sundar said gently. "You said you'd find peace someday. I think she'd be proud of what you're doing." Arjun looked down. "I still miss her," he whispered. "That means she mattered." Sundar said, "And through you, she still does." That night, Arjun visited her grave. He placed a single white flower on the stone, knelt down, and whispered everything that had happened. Then he stood, took a breath, and smiled through his tears. A year later, Arjun Mehta returned to Google, not as an employee, but as a keynote speaker for the company's new ethics and technology initiative. He walked onto the stage, greeted by thunderous applause. Behind him, a giant screen displayed the logo of Voice Code. Now, a nonprofit supported by multiple companies around the world. He looked out at the crowd, and they called me broken. He said, "But I was never broken. I was buried. And all it took was someone to remember me. For me to remember who I was." He paused, scanning the audience. "If you're lost right now, if you think the world has forgotten you, let me be your reminder. You are not invisible. You are not too far gone. And you are not alone." The audience rose to its feet, not out of politeness. But out of reverence. And far in the back of the room, a young intern with shaking hands and tears in their eyes whispered, "Someday I want to be like him." And maybe, just maybe, they would, because stories like Arjun's stories of resilience, truth, and redemption don't just end. They ripple. They rise. They remind the world what it means to truly see one another. Asterisk.